Assalamualaikum to Dr. Ali. My name is Nabila Aisyah, binti Mohammad Khasasi, and today I'll be presenting to you my critical review spelling errors in interlingual subtitles. Do viewers really mind? Alright, so as I mentioned earlier, the title of the research paper that I've chosen is Spelling Errors in Interlingual Subtitles. Do viewers really mind? It was written by Mikolaj Deckert, published in the year of 2021. It is a journal of language studies published by Gamma Online. It is from the volume 21, number 2, May 2021. So the type of the research conducted is quantitative study type. And in this research article, the researcher presents the theme of spelling errors in interlingual subtitling. All right, following that is background of study. So Deckert has provided some broader context for the research, stating that research dealing with such linguistic deficiencies in writing could naturally be thought of as two-pronged. First, it may be concerned with the production component, focusing on language learning or difficulties. For example, Siegel and Mazabel 2014. So the complementary standpoint, which appears to be less explored and is used in this paper, is to discuss the impact that deficiencies in written language have on various aspects of reception. For example, Figueredo and Barnhagen, 2005. They could also investigate the role of spelling errors in subtitling, which a type of audio-visual translation in this research article. Okay, following that is the problem statement or gap. So this study intends to identify ambiguous deficiencies in interlingual subtitles and whether they influence viewers' viewing experience, as well as how much subtitles contribute to the viewing experience for foreign language content, and whether subtitles of poor quality are disruptive to the viewing experience. Also, according to Deckert, while spelling errors have received a fair amount of scholarly attention in various contexts, there have been no studies on spelling errors in subtitles, and these gaps need to be filled. All right, so according to Deckert, the overarching goal of the research article is to determine how unambiguous deficiencies or linguistic flaws in interlingual subtitles influence the viewing experience of a subtitled film. In other words, Deckert attempted to pose and answer the question of how much subtitles contribute to the viewing experience of foreign language content, or more specifically, whether or not subtitles of poor quality interrupt the viewing experience. Not just that, but he goes on to say that the purpose of this paper is to make a cognitive and linguistically oriented contribution to the dynamic field of AVT and media accessibility. So at the same time, the research presented in this paper sheds new light on the reception and, more importantly, evaluation of spelling errors in general. Last but not least, the purpose of this paper is to offer new perspective into a very important and rapidly developing line of work on subtitling that has been concerned with how subtitles are processed by viewers, as stated by Deckert in his research article. Alright, so Deckert has listed previous psychological research that has already been done and produced valuable insights into the role of spelling errors in cognition and, as a result, behavior in his research article. First, Steve, 2012, he has investigated the impacts of errors on online consumer behavior and attitudes. So his research also looked into spelling and grammatical errors in positive and negative written bio comments on sellers, and he discovered some interesting results. The positive comments on a target that contained errors influenced participants' evaluations of the target. So the commenter's perception was then negatively influenced when the comment was linguistically deficient. Furthermore, inaccuracies in positive feedback reduced how much a participant was willing to spend on goods offered by the target. Finally, inaccuracies influence the reliability of the source of the comment. Um, okay, Martin Lecroux and Lecroux 2017 also have conducted research on spelling errors in job application forms. So they come to the conclusion that poor spelling affects the recruiter's decision to reject an application or invite a candidate for an interview, which is naturally mitigated by the recruiter's own spelling competence. And even more surprisingly, spelling was discovered to surpass candidates' professional experience when it came to employability, and the negative impact of spelling errors was stronger where the professional experience was greater. That study, on the other hand, discovered no significant difference in applicant employability depending on the number of spelling errors. Martin Lecroux 2017 also used verbal methods from recruiters assessing applicants in a related study. So during her research, she discovered attributions that were classified into three major categories, such as soft skills, for example, lack of credibility and professionalism, abilities and competency, such as intelligence, and cultural capital, general culture. So that research gives support to the notion that spelling, particularly spelling problems and typographical errors, can have a significant impact on impressions. So in another domain, a study by Bolin and Quinn 2016 also investigates the links between errors in potential housemate emails and how that potential housemate is evaluated. So their findings suggest that mistakes play a role in writer perception, and that, contradictory to the author's expectations, typos were twice as important as what they call grammars. Surprisingly, the reader's reaction to errors was also influenced by the reader's personality. All right, so in his research, Deckert used experimental and corpus methods to look into language and cognition, as well as interlingual translation. Also, according to Deckert, this quantitative study is based on a reception experiment that employs audio-visual stimuli and written questionnaire elicited input, including participant self-reports. Therefore, the work methodologically fits into the line of AVTMA research, which is referred to as reception studies. All right, so from the research conducted, the author Deckert discovered that while viewers are successful in spotting spelling errors in subtitles, the existence of errors has no effect on a range of viewer experience variables such as cognitive load, enjoyment, comprehension, or transportation. Furthermore, while participants were able to assign distinct subtitle authorship attributions based on the presence of errors, poor spelling did not influence the viewer's assessment of the subtitle in terms of their anticipated level of expertise or thoroughness. So the findings, according to Deckert, also show that typos have no effect on translation quality assessment scores, which remain high even when there are as many as 20 errors in subtitles for a 14-minute clip. All right, so in the findings, Deckert has discussed a number of study outcomes. So the first major finding was that the number of spelling errors ranging from 0 to 10 to 20 throughout experimental circumstance had no statistically proven effect on the viewing experience. Um, in terms of cognitive load, enjoyment, comprehension, and transportation. According to Deckert, the only incidence of statistically proven cross-condition difference was discovered for one of the indices of satisfaction. So these findings must be critically grounded in the metacognitive component, which sought comments from participants in the perceptions of the subtitles and the subtitler. Also, in contrary to what would be predicted, Deckert discovered that spelling errors in subtitles did not make the subtitler appear less skilled or conscientious. Likewise, and perhaps most unexpectedly, the perceived quality of subtitles was unaffected by the frequency of mistakes and stayed high across situations. So simultaneously, the results of the authorship attribution item demonstrate that mistakes made viewers substantially less likely to believe that the translation was done by a competent subtitler. Following that, the two other items provided even more direct information on whether viewers in the study were able to notice spelling issues. First, when asked about anything that piqued their interest in the subtitles, participants pointed out spelling problems. Then, when participants were explicitly questioned about mistakes in the subtitles, they showed dramatically differing typo recognition rates across situations. So as a result, the response to the study question posed early in the research paper are plainly negative and to a large degree unexpected. So overall, Deckert discovered that participants did notice errors, but it had no discernible effect on either of the aspect of reception that the researcher investigated in the study. A more significant finding was that viewers did not consider unambiguous linguistic flaws to be serious enough to have a detrimental effect on overall subtitling quality, even in the extreme case of up to 20 typos in a 40-minute film fragment. Also, another explanatory hypothesis to account for the viewer's extraordinary positive appraisal of subtitles with errors is that the participants participate in a good amount of everyday non-professional language communication and writing using a smartphone or a computer. So Deckert goes on to say that in this communication engagement, speed and efficiency take precedence over formal impeccability, including typos, implying that the participants would have been exposed to situations of inadequate linguistic form on a regular basis. This, in turn, could lead to increased tolerance for those flaws, explaining, at least in part, why viewers in the experiment detected typos but did not consider them as a clear indicator of poor quality. All right. Moving on to strength and weakness. So first and foremost, the aspect impacting the research credibility are as follows. The topic of the article is clearly defined, the project description is focused, and the objective of the research is also obvious. The article is well written, concise, and grammatically correct in terms of writing style. The article is very well organized and laid out. Furthermore, the abstract provides a concise review of the study, including the research problem, methods, and findings. Meanwhile, the objective of the study and the research problem was clearly specified as elements influencing the robustness of the research. The research report also logically follows the steps of the research process. The steps flows effortlessly, and the connections are obvious. However, in addition to its virtues, the research piece has some weaknesses in terms of results and discussion. Initially, I expected to see some major findings from the research, not to mention that the topic is solely of interest to specific localized people or has limited significance to the field in some other way. Okay, moving on to my critical summary. So a critical review of Deckert ETAL 2021 spelling errors in interlingual subtitles. Do viewers really mind? Journal of Language Studies, volume 21, number 2, page 103, 135 until 152. So Deckert has conducted a study on how unambiguous gaps in interlingual subtitles affect the viewing experience using Siegel and Mazabal 2014, Figueredo and Van Hagen 2005, and Diaz Sintas 2020 150 research as a foundation. So the purpose of this study was to determine how much subtitles contribute to the viewing experience of foreign language content, or more specifically, whether or not subtitles of poor quality disturb the viewing experience. So Deckert begins by stating that a study that deals with linguistic deficiencies in writing could be naturally conceived of as two-pronged. First, concern with the production component, concentrating, for instance, on language learning for difficulties, Siegel and Mazabal 2014. The complementary perspective that is apparently less explored and is adopted in this paper is to address the effect that deficiencies in written language have on phases of reception. For example, Figueredo and Van Hagen 2005. According to the findings, while viewers succeed in spotting spelling errors in subtitles, the existence of errors have no effect on a range of viewer experience dimensions like cognitive load, enjoyment, comprehension, or transportation. According to Deckert, while participants were able to generate different subtitle order-shape attributions based on the presence of typos, deficient spelling did not impact the viewer's perception of the subtitler in terms of the assessed degree of expertise or diligence. To such a multifaceted subject, Deckert succinctly summarized the research by stating that contrary to what he might have predicted, spelling errors in subtitles did not make the subtitler seem less experienced or less diligent. Similarly, the perception of subtitle quality was not affected by the number of typos and remain high across conditions. And while this study is well presented, Deckert eventually admits through his findings that viewers did not judge unambiguous linguistic deficiencies to be serious enough to influence overall subtitling quality negatively. This is a wonderful concept for how the problem of spelling errors and quality should be handled. There isn't much research in the traditional sense for this article. However, the author does include several samples of work published by individuals who have previously written on the subject. Deckert cites individuals such as Steve, Martin Lecroux, Bolin, Quinn, and others. These are well-known examples and authors, and I believe they give a lot of credibility to the work as a whole. To summarize, it must be acknowledged that the current study is far from conclusive. However, it is a good, well-written article with crucial context for the general audience. In principle, the work is relevant and highly convincing as a whole, and the study has provided some insights into how participants evaluated both the subtitles and the subtitler. Okay, moving on to the recommendations. To get more people involved in this topic, more research must be done and better measures must be developed to improve public understanding of the links between spelling errors, reception, and quality assessment in professional translators, proofreaders, and stakeholders, as these links may be more complicated than intuitively assumed. And that's all from me. Thank you.